Hello, everyone. I just want to say welcome again, back to the table, back to these a series of sessions where we're coming together. And again, if you caught the first one titled "The Red Shirt Leader," you know how this works. We're not here to provide fluff. I'm not here to just dump on you a 40 slide deck lecture. It's just you and me. It's just you and I having a conversation on things that leaders actually wrestle with, when the door closes. And so in today's conversation, I did want to be really poignant and really intentional to talk about the elephant in the room. And this is an elephant that all of us wrestle with, an elephant that we try to avoid. We try to close our eyes when we know that the elephant is there in the room or at the table or on our way to work and also possibly on our way home. And it's the conversation, right? It's the conversation that we're avoiding. And so in today's particular chit chat that I would like to have with you is specifically for leaders and what we avoid and why it costs us so greatly, right? I also want to talk and be honest and be upfront with you. This session is not really about them, it's about you. It's about me. Because every leader I know, myself included, is carrying at least one conversation that we haven't had yet, a conversation that we don't want to have, a conversation that we're avoiding. So, but here's the deal. Let's start with this and let's be quite frank and completely honest. There is a conversation that we know that we close our eyes and wish that it would go away. I know the one, you know the one. We've rehearsed the conversation as if it happened in our head in the shower. We've also drafted an email to address the conversation, and then we deleted that email. You've even told your spouse about it. You've even told your partner about what's going on. Your friend, your coworker, right? You may even have a group chat about the conversation that you need to have. And so here's what I want to do today. Right now, I want for all of us to name the conversation that we're avoiding. Name the person, name the thing. You don't have to say it out loud. Please don't. Hold it in your mind. But for this moment and the few minutes that we have together, we're not going to talk about courageous conversations in theory. We're actually going to work on that one. We're actually going to wrestle it down. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about how to have a courageous conversation. Now, here's the lie that we tell ourselves. Here it is. Here's the lie. The lie that we tell ourselves is that, if we avoid the conversation, that it'll go away and it's free, right? But that's not totally true. Now, let's look at the numbers. In regards to avoidance of a crucial conversation that we need to have, whether it's at work or somewhere in our workplace, 70% of employees avoid difficult conversations at work, and that catapults itself into a dollar amount on average. And then there's research that backs this up, but $7,500 is the average cost, and 7 work days lost when it comes to conflicts that we avoid. Now think about this, and again, I want to equate this into hours per day or hours per week rather. We lose out in the conversations that we're avoiding at least 3 hours of work per week on average of what we spend on unresolved conflict. Now, having said that, there's some things that we avoid as leaders, right? And so what I want you to do is to lean in a little bit. If you need to pause this and take some notes, please do. But we're going to dive into some patience, right? It takes patience, it takes kindness, it takes humility, it takes humbleness, and also takes a little bit of professionalism. But there's 5 disguises that conflicts have that leaders avoid. Okay, now let's go through this. The first of 5. Let's go. Let's do like the Daily Show, right? Or the late night show. Top 5. Number 5. The number 5 ways leaders avoid conflict or conversations is that they look for the detour, right? They talk about the person to everyone except the person. Leaders tend to vent. Their side of the conversation. Hey, can you believe this? Right? That happens in text messages. Now, every detour erodes trust in two directions, believe it or not, right? With the person that we're avoiding and with everyone watching me avoid them. So, number 5 is the detour. Not only have we went from A to B, we have circumvented the individual that we need to have the conversation with, and it has eroded relationships. Not unidirectionally, but bidirectionally in multiple ways. That's number 5. Here's number 4, the dump. So the dump is where, you know what? I'll say nothing, right? We will say nothing. As leaders, to avoid the issue, we'll say nothing for X amount of time, and then one day, everything comes out all at once, right? We just vomit and dump on someone, and now they're not hearing feedback. They're being ambushed by the things that we've accumulated and held on to for that length of time. That's number 4. Number 3, ways in which leaders avoid having difficult conversations is, I'm gonna call it the sandwich. Okay, you ready? The sandwich is complaint, criticism, complaint, compliment, criticism, compliment. We're all taught this, right? But here's the problem with the sandwich. Research shows that the sandwich mostly protects the person giving the feedback, not the person receiving it. So they remember the bread and they forget the meat, right? Let me describe that one more time. We are taught as leaders to give the sandwich where we're giving a positive, then the critical feedback, and then some more positive accolades, and then we run the risk of gaslighting people, right? But what happens in the sandwich is that we bury the truth, between compliments. But again, here's the deal. The compliments that we give is really protecting us instead of having a real intentional and very clear conversation with our people, right? So that's number 3. Number 2, the dilution. The dilution is when we have a conversation, right? We'll do it, right? Technically, but we end up softening the message and then it just evaporates. So the words that we use, they leave the room as if everything is fine, right? So when it comes to what we avoid, sometimes we soften it so much that we really didn't have a conversation at all. I was just a cheerleader for you for 20 minutes, right? Number 1, way that leaders avoid having intentional and courageous conversations that we delay. We just wait for the right time. We just hope that, time heals all wounds. We're waiting for the right season. We're waiting for the right time. We're waiting for the right moon cycle. We're waiting for after the evaluation to have an intentional chit chat. But let me tell you something about waiting for the right time. It doesn't exist. The right time never existed. The right time is a place we send conversations to die. And so let's keep going. Now, why does this happen? Why do we avoid? Okay, we avoid for self-protection, right? We avoid for self-protection and then we dress it up as kindness when we try or think about having a conversation, right? There's a fear that we have of the reaction from the other person. There's a fear that the relationship will just deteriorate and we'll lose our people. Then there's also the fear of ourselves, where, who am I to have this level of conversation, especially when I'm not perfect either. So, all these things happen on why we avoid the conversations that we really, really need to have. So let's keep going. The cost of avoiding is not necessarily an actual bill that you would get in the mail, but what happens is we lose our best people, the culture deteriorates, our credibility goes out the window, and then last but not least, the person themselves, we hold them back from the feedback that they really need to hear, right? So the cost of avoiding conversations is high. There's outcomes to what happens when we avoid conversations. And then there are things that happen in why we avoid those conversations, right? And so as we're coming through this, I just want to give just a couple nuggets on how we can start tomorrow and having a conversation that we've been avoiding, the one that we've been practicing in our head, and it's called C.I.V.I.L, right? It's 5 pieces. And each piece of this word, civil, reminds me on what I need to do to have the courage to have that tough conversation that I really, really need to have. So in civil, C is to clarify my intent. Like, hey, decide what piece of this conversation is for them, not just from them before they speak, right? It's okay to role play, so to practice, but be very clear on the intent of the conversation. Number 2, the I, all right? I in civil. Identify the behavior. If we're having an intentional conversation, courageous one, where there's feedback needed, right? Something happened. Be very clear about the behavior that we're talking about. Be specific. All right, what's objective, observable, right? Let's not use labels. Let's not generalize. Let's not assassinate someone's character, but just be very clear on what the behavior is that has been observed and why we need to have that conversation. And then the V in civil, all right? Validate the humanity, right? See the person, not the problem. Have the problem in the middle, like, hey, help me work through this. This is what I'm noticing. This is what I see. Because dignity always needs to remain at the table. That's V. Here's I in civil. Impact, right? In every conversation, there is some type of impact that is levied on said individual, right? Be precise in it. Say exactly what the behavior is costing the company, what is costing the team, what is costing the work, what is costing them, right? So the L in civil, this brings it all together. Land the path forward. Hey, you know what? At the end of each step that we're going through as we're having this intentional conversation with our people, those that follow behind us, be clear on what the next step is. Be very clear on the follow-up date. Be very clear in what comes next, right? Like, don't go through this process and leave it without a direction, without us knowing where due north is. So in recap, civil, be very clear in your intent, clarify it. I, identify the behavior. V, validate the humanity. I, impact with precision, right? Say exactly what this behavior is costing. And then the L, the last piece, land the path forward. Where are we going? What is happening here? So team, having said that, I want to leave you with some reflective questions. Where are we going with this? I want to send you off with 4 very, very particular questions. So again, if you need to pause this, take some notes, please do. Question number 1. What is the conversation that I've been avoiding? Okay. And what story am I telling myself about why now isn't the time? That's question number 1. What am I avoiding? And why am I telling myself that, you know what, this isn't the right time? That's number 1. Number 2, which pattern is mine? Am I delaying the conversation? Am I watering it down? Am I giving a dry sandwich, right? A poo-poo sandwich? Am I dumping, all right, on someone or on others? Or am I creating a detour, talking all around the person instead of addressing the elephant in the room? Third question. Why is my silence? Why is there silence? What is my silence currently costing? And who's paying the bill besides me? Why am I being quiet? Number 4, and this is your homework. As you are watching this, taking this away, here's number 4, your homework. And I'll say this. What do I want for this person? Not just from them. Because if you can answer that 4th one in a single sentence, then you've already done the civil piece, especially the C, right? Because you've started the conversation. Now, as we wrap this up, close this thing out, there's a whole session, and there's a series that's going to happen. This is number 2. Number 1 was the red shirt leader. If you missed it, click the description somewhere, and it's there. But what I would like for you to do is to have a conversation and just do it. Say what's tough. Say it anyway. Say it scared. Say it imperfect. Say it with a follow-up date, because the conversation that you're avoiding is the leadership you are postponing. So as leaders of leaders, we have to go. We have action. We have things to do. We have a horizon that we're striving for. So why are you waiting? Why are you delaying? Why are you avoiding? And so with all that said, I just want to say thank you for joining me in this additional edition of a seat at the table, where we're having just some real conversations, leader to leader, sharing my mishaps, my misjudgments. Everything that I'm sharing with you are things that I have learned in the field, and now I just want to give it back to you. So team, this has been great. Thank you for joining me here at the table. Jump onto the website, grab the resources. Let's continue this conversation, right? I'll see you then. Let's go.